Alrighty. It has been a hot minute since I have made a video for Revolution, but I am very excited to be making a double feature video. I'm going to be recording back-to-back videos, and today, for this first video, we are ranking all 40 mono green cards in Valir, the Banished Isle, for Green Stompy. Now, Green Stompy is suffering a little bit of a crisis right now. The deck is suffering from just missing slots. We have a ton of excellent 1-drops, a ton of excellent 2-drops, a really solid 5 and 6-drop top of curve. But what we're missing are 3-drops and 4-drops. We have Huskforger Acolyte, a 1-mana mana dork that can ramp into 3-drops, but our 3-drop slots leave a lot to be desired. Brutal Throat Crusher is a card that feels very painful to play. And Redeemer of Hollowed Flesh used to be really good, but after its nerf to being an upkeep trigger instead of start of combat, it has felt far too slow. So, as we go through the 2 new sets coming to Revolution, we're going to be keeping our eyes out, especially for 3 and 4 drops. So, let's go ahead and see what we're losing with the rotation of Cybaros. To be honest, we haven't actually played any of these cards in mono green for a long while. Hostile Evolution has by and large just been replaced by other cards that have come out recently, and we don't really run hexproof tricks anyway. Skittertiller used to be a powerful combo piece with stuff like Yen Slope Skitter and Skull and Nyxweaver, but since both of those are gone now, Skittertiller has fallen off. And finally, while Vasilia Helping Hand has seen play before, and we have ran it, we've had better 5-drops in cards like Aurora Buffer Exec, or better top ends like Tumultivore. So unfortunately, Vasilia fell off a little bit as well. So with this rotation, we're not actually losing any mono green cards. If the deck was in such dire straits, that would be more of a comfort, but we are looking for upgrades with these 2 sets. Yeah, like I said, we're not really losing much. There is no biggest loss. A couple notes as we go through. This is a Green Stompy ranking, so we're only going to be looking at green cards. However, we will be looking at potential synergies with multicolored or even off-color cards in the set that would go in a Stompy shell with green in it. Cards like Rosen have seen a ton of play in Stompy decks, and we might even look at some hybrid cards as well, and there will be hybrid cards ranked in this list, to be clear, because you can't technically cast them for mono green. Alright. Without further ado, let's just go ahead and start at number 40 with Creeping Overgrowth. X and an X and a green for an instant that says return up to X target cards with different mana values from your graveyard to your hand and exile Creeping Overgrowth. I don't actually think this is a bad card at all. I just think Mono Green Stompy is just about the furthest spot away from any deck list you would want. Like, this is something that you want to do a tense, grindy value deck, maybe like a ramp deck or a control deck. And Mono Green Stompy, or really any Stompy deck, just does not have time to play this. However, this is a graveyard synergy card, and with a lot of cards that are on this list, it's going to be enabled by cards like Reaper of Blossoms. And you're going to be seeing a lot of Reaper of Blossoms referenced as we go through this list. Because what Reaper of Blossoms allows us to do is fill our graveyard for cheap. If we're already milling our graveyards, a card like Putragoyf is going to be a great option as well. So if we ever see enough support for like a mono green self-mill deck, I could see, theoretically, Creeping Overgrowth making it as like a sideboard slot against grindy decks. At number 39, we have Titanic Mycoid. 6 and a green for a 8/7 creature fungus giant. It has trample and basic land cycling for 1 and a green. If you're looking for 1-mana cards, or if you're looking for any mana cards to go ahead and fetch up a basic, I think Path of Primacy on Rough-Wreck Tyrannos, or just like any 1-mana version of this effect, is going to be better than Titanic Mycoid. But it does put itself in your graveyard, which is nice, so you can get that creature in your graveyard if you're looking for like card types in your graveyard, or you just want to fill your graveyard. I don't think this is going to see any play in Constructed, but the fact that it's a big enough stat line makes me think, hey, maybe Reanimator wants to give it a try. Next we have Volwood Sentry. 3 and a green for a 6/6 creature, Treefolk Druid. It has Defender and Reach, and says as long as you're Ancient, this creature can attack as though it doesn't have Defender. Ancient is a returning mechanic from Custom to reappear in the set, and you are Ancient as long as you have 8 or more total lands in play or in your graveyard. Now, again, mono green Stompy, as it is right now, is not a self-mill deck, so we have to basically hit 8 land drops if we really want to enable this in mono green. So this would pretty much be exclusively a mill card, and I think Defender, Reach for on a 4-mana 6/6, we wouldn't probably even play that if it didn't have Defender. So the fact that it has this hoop is probably just the death knell of the card. Enabled by all the same stuff that other graveyard decks care about, but unfortunately we just don't care about the payoff here. At number 37, we have Dockside Hawker, 2 and a green for a 1/3 creature, Cat Citizen. When it enters, you create a weapon token, and you may attach it to a creature you control. Unfortunately, this is just going to be understated. I would hesitate to even run this in limited. 2 mana 2/3 or 2 mana 1/3 that gives another creature +1/+0 is just not worth it in any realm of possibility. However, this is 3 mana for 2 cardboards. That's not exactly playable, but being a creature and an artifact could be relevant. We have other cards that do that better, like Redeemer of Hollowed Flesh and Berry Fermenter, but if it becomes an effect that we are so desperate for that will run anything, I could see Dockside Hawker making it into that slot. Speaking of 3 mana cards that create a token, we have Kindly Tavern Keep at number 36. 2 and green-white hybrid for a 2/2 creature human citizen. When it enters, you create a 1/1 white citizen creature token. Pretty simple effect. Unfortunately, we just have better versions. Commander of the Vow makes 2 tokens instead of 1 and can grow. Faithline Marshal has a better stat line, Flash, and can potentially make multiple tokens as well, not to mention Ramp You. So Kindly Tavern Keep's kind of just going to be outclassed. The fact that it's multicolor could come up, could add to your approval, but I just think 3 mana 2/2 that makes a 1/1 is just not going to be a playable stat line. Speaking of 3 drops, we have Gutter Rat, 2 and a green for a 3/3 creature rat mercenary. It has trample, and when it enters, you choose up to one card with Pursuit you own in exile, and put that card into your graveyard. There haven't been any Pursuit cards in this list, but I will let you know it is a mechanic that exiles from the graveyard to help you cast it. So this can go ahead and just rebuy things that you've exiled to cast stuff with Pursuit. Unfortunately, this is pretty much a limited only card. I'm not super sold on any of the Pursuit cards that I've seen specifically for mono green. And I think just running this to get them back is not going to be very good. I think you'd rather just run more self-mill to get more Pursuit cards in your graveyard rather than rebuy one specific one after you've already played it. So I think Gutter Rat is just going to be a non-option. At number 34, we have Ruthless Duo, 2 and a green for a 1/1 creature human mercenary. It has Death Touch, and when it enters, you create another 1/1 with Death Touch. I actually think this card is sneakily okay. I do think Commander of the Vow pretty much outclasses it, but I think it's good to keep an eye on this. If we ever get like Death Touch Matters, this could potentially slot in. And the fact that it's just so good at blocking, who knows? If we have like a deck that's really good at reusing ETBs or blinks, this could be really annoying to potentially fight, knowing that multiple Death Touchers could come down at any moment. So, I don't think we play it, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on. At 33, we have Hired Hand, 4 and a green for a 4/5 creature human mercenary. It has Vigilance and Pursuit for 3 and a green. We can read Pursuit now. You may cast a copy of this card from your graveyard for its Pursuit cost by exiling it and sacrificing a non-land permanent. So basically what this means is we can play it as a 5 mana 4/5 with Vigilance, which admittedly is pretty terrible, but we can then Pursuit it from the graveyard for a 4 mana 4/5 with Vigilance, which is still not good enough for Constructed, but a little more palatable. The fact that we can just mill this over and essentially have drawn a card with stuff like Reaper of Blossoms is really nice, and cards like Blightseer from Solstice will let us be paid off every time we cast a card with Pursuit from our graveyard. I don't think Hired Hand specifically is going to be the card we build this hypothetical Graveyard Exile Matters deck around, but the fact that it exists is nice as an option of like a top end. I could see a world where a Pauper mono green Stompy deck plays this as like a threat that can come back a second time. Defend the Groves is 1 and a green for an instant. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control if it's a druid, then it fights target creature an opponent controls. Now, for a lot of the typal themes in this set specifically, we don't have a lot of cards in our mono green Stompy deck that synergize with them. They either have creature types we don't have in the deck, those creature types care about things that we don't prioritize as a Stompy deck, or they're really expensive payoffs that feel more suited for commander or really big types that we just don't want. This is the exception. Being able to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature if it's a druid, we run a ton of druids. Aurora Buffer Exec is a really solid one. Again, we've mentioned a lot of the Reaper of Blossoms. Where this card falters, unfortunately, is being a fight and not a bite. That is just going to be a lot worse of an effect, and the +1/+1 counter is not going to help out, unfortunately. I could see a world where we play it if we lose a lot of options before from before this set, and then none of the sets in the future add good ones, but I don't think this is a card worth keeping an eye on. Concord Alchemist is 1 in a green-blue hybrid for a 2/2 creature Snake Druid. It has Vigilance, and when it enters, you surveil 2. Pretty simple effect. A lot of the reason why Reaper of Blossoms used to see play was that it milled on end step, and this does something worse. I'll admit it is worse, but similar. This can go ahead and just enter and immediately put stuff into your graveyard, set up your next draw, and having Vigilance is not bad. 2/2 is also not an awful stat line. Like, I don't think it's playable by any means, but it has a bunch of little small things that I could see being relevant for a very specific deck. Killer for Hire is 2 and black-green hybrid for a 3/4 creature Snake Mercenary. It has Death Touch, and when it enters, you create a treasure token. So, I don't think this card is explicitly playable, but again, if we ever get like a Death Touch Matters deck, I could see a world where this sees play. The fact that it's a multicolored card could absolutely be relevant. Mercenary is a supported type line in this set with the, I believe, Pursuit cards. And of course, making a treasure token could be relevant too. It's an artifact, it's a token, it's ramp. All 3 of those things could add up to have like some small benefit. So while I doubt this sees play, green is short on good 4-drops right now, and I think this is worth mentioning. Spit Venom is 2 and a green for an instant that says target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains Death Touch on a turn. Up to 1 target creature you don't control blocks it this turn if able. I honestly think this is better than it looks on the surface. 3 mana fight, because this is technically a fight, is not great. But being a targeted buff matters for stuff like Sleeper Insurgent, and being able to do stuff in combat is nice too. I just think, unfortunately, for 3 mana, it's slightly too much. If this was 2 mana, I would consider it a bit more, but for 3 mana, I think it's just going to be outside the realm of playability. We have cards like Momentous Strike that fight stuff for 1 mana, and that's just going to be far more palatable. At 28, we have Find Your Prey. 1 on green for an instant. It costs 1 less to cast if it targets a mercenary, and it says target creature gets +3/+3 and gains Trample until on a turn. So initially, I just completely wrote this card off because there are literally no mercenaries in Revolution right now before this set rotates in. But we don't actually have that many combat tricks right now. This is like our only +3/+3 combat trick in all of green. So if we ever get more cards like Sleeper Insurgent that care about being targeted by spells like Heroic or Valiant, I could see a world where we run this even without mercenaries, just being +3/+3 and Trample. We have combat tricks like Eternal Struggle, but they're much smaller buffs. So who knows? Maybe Find Your Prey finds a slot even without mercenary type support. Speaking of prey, we have Corner the Prey. 3, a green and a green for sorcery. Choose target creature you control, draw cards equal to its power. Until end of turn, that creature gains Trample. It must be blocked if able. I don't really think we're the type of deck to take advantage of this super well, but we do have cheap creatures that could potentially grow to 4 or 5 power and love being blocked, because we can just go ahead and kill a bunch of things. I think this is not good, to be honest, but I think it's hard to say, because obviously drawing cards is really nice, and Mono Green Stompy is one of the decks that really loses steam in the late game because we don't have access to good card draw. And maybe this is our good card draw. but maybe it's because of 5-mana sorcery is just such a hard sell. Being able to trade and give trample to something is nice. We don't actually have a lot of ways to give trample in mono green Stompy right now. Unfortunately, a lot of our top end already has trample, which is where we would mostly want to put it, and a lot of the bottom creatures don't really need trample, and they're not going to be the ones we're targeting with this. So overall, I think right now it just isn't a fit to the deck, but I could see a world where it's good in the future. Thoroughfare Busker is 2 and a red-green for a 3/2 creature human bard. Whenever you attack, add red or green. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Now, initially, I was just going to go ahead and toss this in the bottom of the list because it's a 3-mana 3/2 that dies to a Stiff Breeze, but our 3-drops aren't actually that great right now. And I could see a world where a 3-mana 3/2 that ramps when you attack, especially even the turn it enters, could be good. This comes off Huskforger Acolyte, and then next turn lets you cast a 5-drop if it survives. There's not really any other 3-drops in Revolution that can do that super consistently while not having like mana dork abilities. So, sorry, while still promoting aggression as well. So I think this could honestly, weirdly, have a slot if we get really, really good 5-drops we want to hit more than just Aurora. Reckless Smashing is 3 a green and a green for sorcery. Creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. Whenever one of our creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, destroy target non-creature non-land permanent that player controls. This is very similar to a cannon card. I think it's called Topple the Tyrant or something like that. But instead of saying non-creature, non-land, it just says artifacts and enchantments. But Reckless Smashing is a lot better because it can blow up battles and planeswalkers, both of which are kind of relevant in Revolution right now. We just had a battle control deck that has kind of fallen off, but we also have planeswalkers running around like Iviana, who has been very popular recently. And this being able to destroy her for going face instead of hitting her is nice. However, +2/+2 and trample is not very worth it for 5 mana, and we have cards like Frenzy Plant that have seen 0 play. Sure, they don't give trample, but they have better payoffs, and Tumultivore is a card that I've considered that I just think is a lot stronger. So, unfortunately, Reckless Smashing I don't quite think gets there, but it is cool to see. Sprouting Sproutling is 5 a green and a green for a 5/4 creature plant. It has affinity for tokens, which means it costs 1 less for each token you control. And when it enters, up to 2 target creatures get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. This is decent. You know, if we have cards like Commander of the Vow and Concurrent Escapist who can make tokens while just playing our game plan, I could see a world where Sprouting Spellling just slots in as like a 2-mana 5/4 that buffs your board for the turn. And that's not bad. That being said, I don't think mono green Stompy specifically has the token bandwidth enough to consistently make this come down like turn 4 or turn 5. But I think if you're splashing colors, Sprouting Sproutling becomes a lot more alluring. Culvert Inspector is 2 and a green for a 3/3 creature rat druid. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, and it says the beginning of combat on your turn, if you're ancient, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And as a reminder, you're ancient as long as you have 8 or more total lands in play or in your graveyard. This is another card for that self-mill deck we were talking about. You can go ahead and just use Reaper Blossoms to go ahead and hope mill lands, and then you probably around turn 4 or 5 you become ancient. I think that's probably just a little bit too slow. This does put out +1/+1 counters, which do have synergies with stuff like Xeno from Cliques of Nyland or the Revered Mechanic from Kintsuo Dusk of Time, but I don't think this card is enough to revitalize that counters archetype. Heart of the Grove is an interesting one. 3 a green, a green, and a green for an enchantment. As it enters, you choose a creature type, and at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature card of the chosen type or a land card from among them onto the battlefield, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Initially, I wrote this card off because, again, like I mentioned earlier, we don't really have a mono-green Stompy deck that can take advantage of this. All of our creature types are pretty different. But then I looked at Solastier's adventure creatures, and they're almost all spirits. We can run a top end of a bunch of spirits and this cheat out a giant creature each turn. And that seems pretty decent. What I think unfortunately kills the card here is that it's an upkeep trigger. A 6-mana investment and being an upkeep trigger is so slow. We don't get to attack with a creature we cheat in for 2 turns from now, and that is just a death sentence, I believe. So I think while this card is really cool in its current state, I don't see it seeing much play. Pattern's Abundance is 2 and a green for an instant. You can search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put one into the battlefield tapped and the other into your graveyard, then shuffle. Obviously, this is a card to help enable the Ancient Archetype Unlimited. I think as an instant, it does get a little more interesting because you can go ahead and hold it up on your opponent's turn or hold up interaction, which is super interesting. But I think our sorcery speed options are a bit stronger. Scour the Crownlands gives you fixing for all your colors and makes a zombie token, which can be helpful. And Temporal Growth can potentially draw you a card. I think Pattern's Abundance is the weaker of the three, but I could see a world where a Flash deck wants it over these other two. I don't know what Flash deck also wants to ramp, but hey, I'm really not in that circle, so I'm going to leave it up to the more experienced players on how to compare Pattern's Abundance to our other options. Speaking of 3-mana ramp spells, we also have Trespass the Volwood. 2 and a green for an enchantment. As long as it's on the battlefield, it's a forest land in addition to its other types. And as long as you're ancient, it's a 5/5 tree folk creature in addition to its other types and has vigilance, reach, and haste. I do like this one a little bit more than the other option, but I think overall Temporal Growth still gets the nod for me. I think this is a very cool option though, especially since it's sit around on the battlefield as an enchantment that could have some synergies, and turning into a 5/5 in the late game is certainly nice. Vigilance and reach are really good blocking stats, and overall I think it's just a really solid package, and I wouldn't be surprised if like a green ramp mill deck of some kind uses this as like one of its bridge to the late game creatures, you know? Number 19, we have Setral Mender. 2 a green and a green for a 4/3 creature tree folk druid. It has reach, and when it enters, you mill 3 cards. Then you may return a druid or land card from your graveyard to your hand. Compared to our other 4-drops, this one's a little on the weaker side, but we don't actually have very many 4-drops that are card advantage. There's stuff like Vestige of the King's Fall, but we don't really have the zombies to make that work. So I think Setral Mender is the first in that category to actually draw us cards on our 4-drop. I'm not sure that's what we're looking for in a mono green Stompy deck, but the fact that it's unique in that regard alone has given it a higher spot on the list. Reach is not a bad stat line, and the fact that we do actually have druids we can return with this and not just lands is nice. I think overall there are other options in this set that are going to be more enticing, but I have my eye on Setral Mender as a potential grindy tool. Outskirts Steward is a single green mana for a 1/1 creature human druid. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Very simple 1-drop. Once we get a bit of a top end going, it's going to grow. We already have a card like this in Revolution, Uncoiling Realmspawn. Fortunately, that card has seen no play, so I fear Outskirts Steward may go the same way, but the fact that it's a 1-drop and not a true 2-drop is a lot nicer because you can play this turn 1, play your ramp spell turn 2, and then play your 4-drop turn 3 and get the counter on Steward. I don't think that's going to be strong enough for Constructed, but I think the line is definitely a lot better of an option than Realmspawn, so I'll have my eye on this to see how it does. Life from Death is 1 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature control. And when you sacrifice this enchantment as an additional cost to cast a creature spell, that creature enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. Okay. This is not a mono green Stompy card. We don't have the bandwidth for it. It's just not going to happen. But I wanted to take this time to step out of the mono green Stompy list and just gush about one of my favorite decks that I've been tinkering on with in the background that this card goes perfectly in. It's a Naya Exile from Graveyard deck. We have so many cards that exile cards from a graveyard for good value that are already playable. Blightstalker, Fabricated Anomaly, staples of a lot of Stompy decks already, mid-range decks even. And then we have cards like a Yeshi's Agent to help pay it off, and now Life from Death. We're going to make tons of counters, tons of tokens, and it's just, I'm really excited to test this out. This is probably going to be one of my day one decks just off the back of Life from Death alone. I think cards like Lost Pilgrim are also great enablers for it. Unerring Killer is 3 and a green for a 5/5 creature human mercenary. It is trample, and it says this creature has haste as long as it entered from or was cast from a graveyard this turn, and has Pursuit for 3, a green. As a reminder, Pursuit says you may cast a copy of this card from your graveyard for its Pursuit cost by exiling it and sacrificing a non-land permanent. So the biggest thing we have to take note of is that this is no Aurora. This is going to be much less instant value. It's not going to be Tumultivore because Multivore is going to buff your board and have higher stats. But, and this is important, this can be cast from the graveyard. We could potentially have a face-up in the graveyard, 5 mana, 5/5 trample haste, just ready to go anytime we have sacrifice fodder. And all we have to do is mill it over. Don't even have to play it. I think that has some potential. I'm really happy to discard this card to Fabricated Anomaly. And that is just something that's like super easy to do. So, Unerring Killer, I have my eye on you. Not for typical Stompy, but other lists, absolutely. Toxin Peddler is 1 in a green for a 2/2 creature bird mercenary. It has Death Touch, and when it enters, up to 1 target creature you control gains Death Touch until end of turn. So, the first thing that came to mind with this is that this is really good at helping push damage, you know? If we stick this on a creature that our opponent finds it hard to block already, it's going to be really good for helping it get through. Ursus Minora having Trample and Death Touch is disgusting. Growing Gecko having Death Touch means it's going to be able to get through more boards than it normally otherwise would. And just generally, Death Touch is really nice on big trample creatures, and we do run a couple of those. So I could see a world where Toxin Peddler sees play. The issue is that 2 mana 2/2 Death Touch by itself is not really good, so you only want to have this be the follow-up to something, and that's kind of rough for a 2-drop, because we really don't have great 1-drops for this to target with Death Touch. So the fact that we can't really play it on curve happily is going to be tough. Blossoming Steward is 1 in a green for a 2/2 creature Treefolk Druid. It has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, you gain 1 life. And you can pay 1, tap it, and sacrifice a land to return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I don't think Mono Green Stompy wants this very much. There are very cool lands you can repeatedly sack to this. There is a land in this set, I believe, that is legendary, that when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you draw a card. I think that's a really cool card to loop with this. But I don't think for normal mono green you want this. Now, for maybe like a dedicated ultra into it landfall deck, Blossoming Steward could have a slot. And it's also very interesting because it curves into Dreadchant Warcaller really well. So for the fellow Dreadchant Warcaller heads like me, I might try out Blossoming Steward as just like a card that enables Warcaller. Do Reward is an interesting one. A single green mana for an enchantment. When it enters, you mill 3 cards, and you may return a creature or land card from among them to your hand. And you can pay 2 and a green to sacrifice it to gain 3 life and create a treasure token. I think this is kind of interesting. Rex Tyrannos and Journey Begins are better at digging. That's just a fact. Rex Tyrannos is gonna head. They both find creatures and lands, but Rex Tyrannos gives you a 7/5 on the back end, while Do Reward gives you a much worse sack ability. And Journey Begins is Journey Begins, which is one of the best cards in the game. Or at least in the format. But what this does is it gives you enchantment lying around. There are a ton of cards in the format that care about just having enchantments lying around on the battlefield. This also mills cards. We've already seen cards that care about having a stocked graveyard in this set, and Do Reward is going to support you with that. It does life gain. We have cards from Exalted Twiltree that care about you getting life, and it makes treasures, which helps us ramp into our 5-drops, like Aurora, which is a good card to play on turn 4. Like, it does a bunch of small little things that all add up into potentially finding a home that can take advantage of it. They don't even need to take advantage of all these modes, because it has so many different little knobs you can turn in your deck to make it sing. So, while I don't know if typical mono green runs it, I could see a world where potentially it could. And the Chase is 1 in a green for sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. And then it has Pursuit for 3, a green, and a green. The biggest issue with this card is that it's 2 mana and not 1 mana like Momentous Strike. Being 1 mana is one of the strongest parts about Momentous Strike because it's very easy to fit into your curve. 2 mana is twice as hard. But Momentous Strike doesn't have Flashback, and End the Chase does have a version of Flashback. Being able to have removal face up in the graveyard is so debilitating for opponents to play around. Because if I have a big creature and they want to start sticking their value creatures, they have to deal with End the Chase first. And that is an awkward thing to play around. Now, I don't think it's better than Momentous Strike, but I'm willing to try it. I think 2 mana is not the end of the world. And just having that flashback mode, so nice. Next, we have the Cetral Shaper, 1 a green for a 2/3 legendary creature as a druid. It has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, put a loyalty counter on this creature and surveil 1. And then you can pay 1 in the blue to put a loyalty counter on this creature and transform it, but only as a sorcery. And it transforms into Junie. She says, as long as you're ancient, you may activate the loyalty abilities of Junie twice each turn rather than only once. And remember, you're ancient as long as you have 8 or more lands in play or in your graveyard. You can +1 to surveil 1, then draw a card. You can pay 0 to tap a non-land permanent and put a stun counter on it, and you can -2 to create an XX green elemental creature token, Rex's number of lands you control. Alright, elephant in the room first. This is not a fully mono green card. You do need to pay 1 in a blue to transform it, but even just a mono green, I think the front side's not that bad. 2 mana 2/3 that has a whenever a land you control enters, just surveil 1 is nice. It puts loyalty counters on itself, which can actually matter for cards like Xeno. And then that's pretty much it for the front side. It is going to stock our graveyard a little bit and have a nice stat line, but I think if you want that, Reaper Blossoms does that job better. You're only running this if you can actually transform it in your green deck, which means it isn't technically a mono green Stompy card. But pretending we're adding blue, I think this card's pretty solid too. That Planeswalker on the backside has really strong abilities. Being able to draw 2 cards each turn when you're ancient, or tap 2 things and lock them down, or create 2 big tokens each turn, or any mix of those abilities is strong. Not just strong, with exclamation points and italicized and underlines and bold. It's good. I think this card is absolutely worth enabling. And I could see a very strong argument for Stompy going Simic for this. And I don't know, blue hasn't had good pairings with green in so long. It's kind of like just so refreshing to see something really strong and potent like this. Next we have Laybound Ritualist, 2 green for a 3/3 creature Treefolk Druid. Lands you control enter untapped, and you can pay 3 a green, a green, and a green to reveal the top 4 cards of your library and put any number of permanent cards from among them into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. What this is going to do is just go ahead and let your Auroras and Burgeoning Nebulas put lands into play untapped. I don't know if that was worth it just by itself, but the fact that it has this 6 mana draw 4 cards mode, because trust me, if you're running this, you're going to make sure it's drawing 4 cards, is really solid. I'd mentioned earlier how mono green has a lot of trouble actually just getting cards in hand. They run out of gas pretty easily. This is a late game way just to say, hand refill, I'm good. Doesn't activate as a sorcery. It just goes ahead and throws them in your hand whenever you need it. It's good. And you know, this is going to be the last 3-drop on the list, so this is going to be our best option for ramping into with Huskforger Acolyte. Admittedly, I was hoping for a starter 3-drop, but this will have to do in the meantime, and we'll have to see if the Innistrad set has anything similarly worth our while. Next we have Winding Assailant, 1 green for a 2/2 creature Snake Mercenary. It has Death Touch and Pursuit for 4 a green and a green. When you cast this spell for its Pursuit cost, you copy it twice. So this is a 2 mana 2/2 with Death Touch, that when you pursue it, it becomes a 3/2/2s with Death Touch. I think that's decently solid. Just like the card I mentioned earlier, the 5 mana 5/5 with Trample and Haste if you pursue it. This does something very similar, but I think this is a lot better than that card because I can actually play this card early. If you play the other card as a 5 mana 5/5 Trample, you feel awful, but 2 mana 2/2 with Death Touch, you do not feel sad about that at all. And again, if you just mill it over, you're very happy to just play this as 3 2/2s with Death Touch when you can afford it. That's not bad. I think this card is going to have some tough competition because there are a lot of green 2-drops that are really strong right now, but I could see a world where it sees play in this mono green mill deck that we were talking about. Volwood Deadeye is 1 green for a 3/2 creature Azure Mercenary. It has reach, and whenever another mercenary you control enters, you create a weapon token. You may attach it to a creature you control. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, again, main elephant in the room, there are no mercenaries in Revolution before this set comes in. It's going to basically fully rely on the cards in this set to make it work. But what this does that's very important is being a 2 mana 3/2 that generates cardboard. A good stat line that just makes tokens. That's pretty solid. The fact that it just can buff itself too, you don't have to attach to the other mercenary that entered, is really nice too. Swinging as a 2-mana 4/2 on turn 3 isn't bad. Foes Unfed can go ahead and grab this for cheap and put another mercenary into play to trigger it automatically. Chasing Stars can take advantage of all the fodder you're generating by potentially sacrificing the weapon tokens. Like, I could see a world where it sees play. It's a good stat line that generates cardboard. Those cards tend to be decent. Shape the Pattern is a single green mana for sorcery. You search your library for a basic land card. If you're ancient, instead search your library for a creature or land card. Reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Now, the main problem with this is that Mono Green Stompy isn't ever really looking for a specific creature. I mean, occasionally we'll want to find our top end so we can win the game, but this card is usually not going to have what we want. But the fail case of finding a basic could be cool in a landfall-focused deck. This self-mill deck can go help us find our Juniper, I believe the name was, right? Let me get the name really quick. Yeah, Juniper, which is solid. And the fact that it can just go ahead and grab creatures or lands once it's ancient is nice too, if we have like a really strong land we want to grab. So I think it's decent. I think probably combo decks are going to want to take advantage of this much more than us, because again, we have a Journey Begins, which is kind of just bustedly good. So Shape the Pattern is going to have some trouble competing with it there. Central Arborist is a single gray mana for a 1/1 creature cat druid. Whenever it attacks, you may discard a land card. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. You can pay 1 and tap it to surveil 1. If a land card is put into your graveyard this way, you may return it to your hand. Now, I have to admit, I don't actually think this card is good. 1 mana 1/1 that requires you to go card disadvantage to put a single +1/+1 counter on it, even if you're just discarding a land card, is a rough sell. And I don't think the tap surveil mode is good either. But it is a 1-drop that can grow. That alone has proven to be good in the past. So I can't risk putting it lower on the list that like I think it deserves, because I think just the fact that it's a 1 mana 1/1 that can grow every time it attacks, even if you're going card disadvantage, I have to respect the potential. So it is going at number 6, but I definitely have my eye on it for not being as strong as it could potentially be. Speaking of 1-drops, I think this one's a lot better. 1 mana 1/1 creature horror with Death Touch. When it enters, you surveil 2, and you can pay 2 and a green to exile from your graveyard and surveil 2. Lost Pilgrim is not a card that has seen a lot of play, but the fact that this surveils 2 instead of just milling is so much better. Being able to keep the cards you want on top and bin the rest is really good, and the fact that it just has Death Touch is really nice too, because instead of Lost Pilgrim just jumping, dying, and then you pay 2 and a green later, this kills something and then dies while jumping. But the fact that it trades up makes it a lot more threatening to deal with. And paying 3 mana to just surveil 2 in the graveyard could have relevance later in the game. I mean, I think Lost Pilgrim's ability is a little better there, but Shroud Piercer is the better package overall, in my opinion. At number 4, we're starting what I like to consider the cream of the crop. These are cards I absolutely will be trying in Mono Green Stompy, no questions asked, because I do think they have what it takes to see play. So let's start off with Leonin Revivalist. 1 and a green for a 1/2 creature cat druid. When it enters, you can put a basic land card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. Simple as. 2 mana 1/2 ramp is just easy to do. I do think of the cards that currently ramp for 2, this is probably the only one that a Stompy deck might actually want to try. I think Ursus Majora is too slow. You can't be skipping turn 2 as Mono Green Stompy to draw a card and put a basic into play. Or, I mean, you might be able to, but I don't think Ursus Majora is worth it. Step Beyond is even less so, because you don't even get a creature in the back half. I think Leonin Revivalist does something in actually being a creature that can attack and block. And the fact that it can grab from the graveyard is nice too. So if we ever do that Reaper of Blossoms deck, this is going to go ahead and have a spot in there. So yeah, I like Leonin Revivalist. I think it's a good card, and I'll be interested in trying it. But now starts the cards I am really into. These are the cards that I know I will be playing at least one copy of, and I am doubting that I will ever have to cut, because I think these cards are gas. Starting off with Esteemed Exterminator. It's 2 a green and green for a 5/5 creature human mercenary. It can't be countered, it has hexproof from instants, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. It is a 4-drop that is good. Praise Green. 4 mana 5/5. Good stat line. We have a 6/5 right now, but it's not hexproof from Instance, and it can be countered. This is such a good line of text. I love Can't Be Countered. I love hexproof from Instance. This is going to be a pain for a lot of control decks to deal with. 4 mana 5/5 dodges Nightfall. Oh my god, it dodges Nightfall. I cannot tell you how glad I am to finally have cards in mono green that don't die to Nightfall, but calm down before it. Yes, this is everything you want. It can't even be chumped very easily, so it has game against mid-range decks. Oh my god, it dodges Ascent. It dodges the 1 black Vigor removal spell. Oh my god, it does everything. It's great. The one thing it doesn't do, unfortunately, is anything if your opponent has a board wipe. So if you just play this and then your opponent follows up with a board wipe, and unfortunately we are seeing a 4 mana board wipe in this rotation, Esteemed Exterminator is going to look really bad. So it is a bit of a polarizing card, which is why it is not the 4-drop I am most high on in this set. That one is Waylon, Bloodhunter. 2 a green and a green for a 4/4 legendary creature, Cat Mercenary. It has haste. Waylon can't be blocked by more than one creature and must be blocked by a creature with a bounty counter on it if able. And then I can pay black to put a bounty counter on target creature that doesn't have one. It gains when this creature dies, each opponent draws a card and gains 2 life, activate only as sorcery. Now, this does die to Nightfall, but 4 mana 4/4 haste is such a good stat line. And the fact that this is hard to jump is nice too. The bounty counter text is pretty much superfluous here for a mono green deck, but I could see a world where we run a little bit of splash mana just to make sure this is enabled, because it is a pretty good payoff if we actually run black. This is not Yen Slopeskidder, but it's close enough that I'm at least willing to try it. Waylon, I believe. But before we move on to number 1, let's look at our honorable mentions. These are colorless cards that I could see us running in a mono green deck. First, we have Forgotten Foundation. It enters tapped, and when it does, you surveil 1. And then you can tap it and sacrifice it to search the library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Sorry, just put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle, not tapped. That's very important. This is 2 land drops for 1 land. Mono green landfall. Might be interested. Humming Furnace is a land that enters tapped. When you do, you may have it enter tapped. When you do, create a weapon token, and it taps for colorless. This is very similar to a card printed in Revolutions Past that did the same thing, but it made a food token. I think weapon tokens are better than that. So Humming Furnace could be decent. I don't think we have much use of a weapon token, unfortunately, so I don't think we want this. The fact that it's a token or an artifact probably isn't going to be super relevant to our game plans, but who knows. Keeping an eye on it is a good call. We have Memorial to the First Shaper, a 2-mana artifact that says whenever a non-land permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent to trigger, counter that ability unless its controller pays 2. This is really freaking good at hosing ETBs and also good at hosing negative ETBs. We don't have a ton of negative ETBs, unfortunately, that we want to run, so I don't think that line is going to be too good, but being able to turn off scary ETBs from our opponent's side is nice. Meteor Hellion is one of the scourges of mono green, and the fact that this just like kills it is nice. Unfortunately, this does not deal with the cast triggers from Iviana decks on all the scary dragons, so I don't think this is going to be as effective against those decks. Finally, we have Prized Possession, a 2-mana artifact equipment. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, its controller gains control of this equipment and unattaches it. You can have... it gives equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw 2 cards, and has equipped for 2. I think you pretty much are interested in this in a very heavy control meta, because this is going to give you card draw grindy advantage, and control is going to find it difficult to steal this from you because they do not run enough creatures. I don't think it's good, but I'm keeping an eye on it because it could potentially be nice. But moving on to number 1, it's going to be a sideboard staple of its entire rotation in Revolution, I believe. It's Pick Your Poison. A reprint from Murders at Carlisle Manor. It's a single green for a sorcery that says choose 1. Each opponent sacrifices an artifact of their choice. Each opponent sacrifices an enchantment of their choice, or each opponent sacrifices a creature with flying of their choice. This card's just really good. In Standard, it's probably one of the best sideboard tools, and Legacy, they play this, I believe. This is just going to replace cards like Mass Smith and Hungry Blob, because now instead of having to pay 3 mana to get rid of something, I can just pay 1. Obviously, the Edict can miss occasionally, but usually you don't have to deal with much artifacts in this deck, so you're really just going to be hitting enchantments with this. And obviously creatures with flying. And this does deal with Iviana decks much better. You can go ahead and just blow up their biggest scary dragon a lot of the time. It doesn't deal with specifically Curation very well, because Curation is going to bring multiple dragons. But otherwise, I think you're pretty happy to just jam this. Like, it's just a good card. I mean, it's a proven track record, and it's strong. I really can't say much more about it. All right. That was Valir, the Banished Isle. Very solid set. It does give us the 4 drops we are looking for mono green. So now, right after this video is posted, I'm going to go ahead and start recording for the Innistrad set and hope we can find the 3 drops we need there. All right. Thank you everyone so much for watching. This was provocative, and I'm signing off. Goodbye.